I'm here to crush all of your dreams this evening. And how sorry, and how many I am? How many people are here because you sort of work in the music business at some level, and you're sort of more here to get a better lay of the land, maybe learn some new trends, things like that. Wow. Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Well, so to speak, maybe just to get things started, to speak to the folks that are here to kind of start maybe a career path for the music business, I thought one thing that would be great to do would be to kind of start with each of our panelists and hear a little bit about what your early thoughts were as it related to the music industry. Maybe you were in a band and realized that wasn't going to work out so well. Maybe you always dreamed of crunching numbers. But I thought maybe we'd start with kind of just go right down the line and get a sense of you know, where your headspace was when you started and how you actually went up parlaying that into a first job. So maybe we'll start down with Perry. Sure.
So I actually started and have been with Warner Music now for 10 years. I started as an intern in '99 down in Miami after I spent some time at the University of Miami playing jazz saxophone for a second until I realized I'm not going to do that forever.
Not so much. Yeah.
I wanted to, but it wasn't a reality. So luckily, as part of a field trip, if you will, we went to NARM when NARM was still really big. And went out to Vegas, and I met a bunch of people trying to network and get any internship I could. And my first internship was with Sony BMG, Latin. I don't speak Spanish, so that lasted for no time at all. And got the Warner.
You did make it out of the interview process, though.
I did, and wound up. I can pack CDs better than anyone else.
Great.
Send them to South America quicker than anyone else. But I got the Warner gig, and I was lucky enough that the Warner Publications division where I was, it was a small new media division, and they were responsible for creating educational DVD product, and the core business was sheet music. But I fell into this new media opportunity, and since that time have always been part of the new. That's been my platform, is I have to be the new. From there, I was moved to Atlanta to work in a new division, and then was brought back here to New York to do the digital thing when this crazy thing called iTunes was starting. And
so you started as an intern, though. Your
started as an intern.
Entry was
1999. Started as an intern, 19 years old, and
paid?
actually it was not paid. It was a credit internship, which turned into a non-credit internship, which turned into I left school and wound up finishing my degree online through not through University of Miami, through a school called Nova Southeastern, which was at the time was one of the only schools in South Florida offering this distance learning program.
And how long did you spend working for no money?
I was working for 2 years for no money.
Yeah.
I was driving on, anyone who's familiar with Miami, the 836 traffic down to Kendall was like a 2+ hour drive every night. And it sucked, but it was what I wanted to do. And I just remember a conversation with my mom saying, "What are you going to do, become a beach bum?" And I said, no, I wanted to work.
No, it's worse than that, Mom.
Yeah, I want to work. But I wanted to work so bad that literally, you know, it sounds cheesy, but I did. And it was better than biology. It was better than whatever class I was in. And that's it. You know, I've just been part of the new. And so any time that Warner has a new division, I'm lucky enough that they turn to me and ask, what can you do with ringtones? What can you do with social media? What can you do with anything digital? And here I sit.
Good. Good.
Okay. So I actually went to school in New Orleans. I went to Tulane University, and there I majored in Spanish, which was totally opposite music. Didn't really have anything to do with music.
If you two had gotten together earlier, that would have been phenomenal.
But I was in New Orleans, and there was tons of music around, and I worked at the radio station at school. I worked at a music venue down there, would just always go out and see music, and I was definitely one of those people among my friends who would be discovering new music when I was younger and making mixtapes for everybody. So it was always definitely in my blood, something that I love to do. So when I graduated, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with Spanish? Of course, my parents asked the same thing. But I ended up deciding to try to get an internship at a record label. So I did at London Records, and I worked there for free with my parents, and just commuted in and just saved up, you know, whatever little bit of money I had, and you know, worked for free for probably about 5 months at London Records, just doing like stuffing envelopes and just helping out any way I could at at the time, and the guy that I was interning for there was a guy named Greg Glover, who's very successful right now, but he was an assistant at the time, and he really took me under his wing and helped me out, and you know, if they had a job, he would always tell me that I would have recommended you, but they ended up not having anything available. And he played basketball with someone over at BMI, a guy named Jeff Cohen, who was looking for an assistant at the time, so ended up recommending me to Jeff. I went in and got an interview and ended up getting the job at BMI as his assistant. And he really gave me a ton of responsibility at the time, like putting on showcases and starting open mic nights, and I kind of moved up the ladder a little bit there. So I stayed at BMI for about 7 years, and then kind of got a little burnt out and ended up going into publishing and moving over to Cherry Lane, and now I've been there for 5 years now, and I'm doing a lot of pitching for film and TV and advertising and video games, and just working on the syncs side of things.
We'll definitely talk more about the sync side as we get into the evening. That's become a fairly important part of the music business, I would say. Mr. Barasch?
Hi, I'm Doug, and just wanted to thank everyone for having us here. This was really awesome. I came into the music industry kind of in an odd way. I was living in Los Angeles and working for a talent agency, worked for a creative artist agency for a number of years, and in my tail end time there, they had started a new media department when this was in 1999 into 2000, where no one was really quite sure what new media was going to be, and everyone was just trying to figure it out. I didn't even know what my place was going to be there, but I knew that it was something that was very interesting to me, and something where I kind of considered it being new media, the digital space being the wild, wild west, where it was basically, it's really whatever you can make of it. I moved back to New York and was offered a position with Epic Records in the new media department there in June of 2001. And for me, it was just the perfect position because it was starting kind of ground level, but it was a department that was looking to do a lot of different and unique things. And in my tenure at Epic, which started in 2000 and went to 2007, I just want to step back. It's really quite fascinating if you think about it. So I started at Epic in 2001, and now it's 2009, and since that time, we've seen the creation of Facebook, MySpace, iTunes, YouTube, pretty much all this incredible growth in the digital landscape. And what excites me most about it is the fact that tomorrow, who knows what's going to be launched tomorrow. You know, now like the buzzword right now is all about Twitter, and we're all talking about Twitter right now. But in a week, maybe someone, maybe you, might create something that we'll all be buzzing about. So I was at Epic Records, worked on some really terrific projects there, including the Chicago movie soundtrack, Garden State, Natasha Bedingfield, Franz Ferdinand. And in 2007, I left looking for an opportunity to run a department, and I started with Verve in February of last year, and I oversee the marketing, digital strategy with iTunes, website design, social networking outreach, pretty much all of the above.
Great. Mike?
I started working at record stores while I was finishing college in Northwest Pennsylvania, and I was always I was a born and raised in New York kind of guy, and being stuck in Northwest Pennsylvania, I wanted to get back here. And so upon finishing school, which was I was an English major. I didn't really want to write poems or work on that first book, so I stayed with the record store for a while. It seemed like more fun, and used that to get back to New York. And once I was in the New York world, there were lots of parties and lots of events to go to, and I went to a lot of them. They usually had an open bar, which was a good time if you were a poor young working guy. And
or if you're a poor middle-aged working guy.
Yeah, exactly. And so doing that, I started to think working for a record company would be kind of a cool thing, because music was what I did, so there were a couple of times I almost went to work for a major label, and it seemed like as I was about to get my resume in, they had big layoffs, Black Fridays or Black Thursdays or whatever they were called, and so I finally left music retail, and I went to work for a small independent distributor out in Hollis, Queens, which is where Run DMC and all that stuff started out at. It was a distributor called Important, and And I went to work there, and it was kind of funky because it was at the end of the subway line. Then you had to take a gypsy cab, and you had to walk over, crack envelopes to get to work. But it was in the music business, and so I did that, and people who had known me for years were like, "Geez, I always thought you'd go to work for a major label." And I was like, "Well, I don't really want one of those jobs where I just answer the phone and make phone calls. I want to really learn about the record business and wear a lot of hats." And so I said, I'm going to go work there for 3 years. And 3 years and 3 days later, I was working for Atlantic Records, who had actually called me up while I was at Important to see if I wanted to work for them. They were getting into the alternative band world. This was probably like 92, 93-ish, and they wanted somebody to oversee that area. And so, of course, Atlantic was notorious for every 2 years getting into the alternative band world, hiring people, and then 3 years later getting out of the alternative band world, and all those people would be out of work. So I wanted to make sure they had a bit more of a plan than the Helmet record they were working. Anyway, that was a really good time, and I got to do a lot of really great stuff there, and I worked with a lot of awesome bands, and after I worked with Interscope Records, we launched the first Snoop Dogg record, a host of things. The Snoop Dogg was pretty funny because, to get the first single out, we basically flew the film for the single across the country in a plane by itself, made it over the weekend, and had it in stores the following Thursday as an immediate cutout. I think we shipped like 700,000. So needless to say, the sales numbers...
I bought one of those.
The sales numbers were a lot better back then. I got bored with Atlantic Records because the problem with major labels is, they have this reputation for throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And so I decided to leave, and I went to work for this EMI startup label called the Enclave. And me and Tom Zutat, we signed a few bands there, one of which was Bell and Sebastian, one was Sloan, a couple of others. But there was a lot of infighting amongst EMI, as there, I think 15 years later, there still is. And they shut it down after a year. It was the first time I was out of work. And all through my career, I had people say, "Do you want to work for us? Do you want to work for us? Do you want to work for us?" And then suddenly I didn't have a job. And I decided I didn't want to do sales and marketing anymore. I wanted to sort of go into more of a different area, and nobody would hire me. So I started my own consulting company. And I've done that for about 10 years. I run 3 artist-owned labels. One's a new artist, 2 artists who have been around for a while, World Party and Tesla. They have enough of an audience that they're able to get their own deals. And then I went to work for Tommy Boy 3 years ago, where I've had periodic stops along the way. But at Tommy Boy, I oversee all their non-urban radio, their sales, work with the marketing. I oversee their international, and I do an A&R there. So it's kind of interesting in that, like, almost 20 years later, the desire to get dirty and take a less glorious job, where I could wear a lot of hats, I'm now wearing a lot of hats.